Mara Voss had never owned a dress that fit her right, and the one she wore tonight was not an exception. It belonged to her sister. It pulled tight across her shoulders and hung loose at the waist, like it couldn't decide who she was supposed to be. She kept tugging at the seam and telling herself to stop. The ballroom was too big for her. Everything in it was too big for her. The ceiling stretched up into shadows, and hanging from it were chandeliers made of pale antlers, twisted together like something that used to be alive and had decided to keep glowing anyway. Under them stood wolves in silk and velvet, laughing in low voices, watching each other more than they watched anything else. Mara counted the exits. 3. She always counted exits. It was a habit from childhood, from living in a house where you needed to know where the doors were before you needed to know why. "You look like you're about to run," her sister Wren whispered, squeezing her arm. "I look like I borrowed your dress, and it knows it." "Stop it. You look good. I look like a healer wearing a costume." Wren didn't answer that, because it was true, and because there was nothing to say to a true thing except let it sit there. Mara wasn't supposed to be at the mating ball. People like her didn't get invitations. People like her got told, politely, to wait outside with the coats. But Wren had begged, and Wren never begged for anything, so here Mara was, standing at the edge of the biggest room she had ever been in, wearing a dress that wasn't hers, in a body that hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days. She hadn't told anyone about that part. The healers' quarters had run low on rations again, and there was a system to who ate first, and Mara was never first. She told herself it was fine. She told herself a lot of things were fine. A courtier in green touched her elbow and asked her to dance, the way courtiers do when they've had too much wine and want a new person to be charming at. Mara said yes because saying no felt like it would take more energy than she had left. The floor moved. Or she did. It was hard to tell which. She remembered thinking, somewhere in the fog, that the chandelier looked like something underwater. She remembered thinking that the man's hand on her back was warm, but not warm enough. And then she wasn't thinking anything at all, because the floor came up to meet her. She didn't hit it. An arm caught her under the shoulders before her knees found the marble, and for one long second the entire room simply stopped existing. There was only the arm, and the smell of cedar and something colder underneath it, like snow that hadn't melted yet, and a voice, very close to her ear, saying nothing at all. Just breathing. Just holding. King Rian Ashgrave had been watching her since she walked in. He hadn't meant to. He told himself later that it wasn't a choice, that his body had simply noticed her the way a compass notices north, without permission, without asking if it was convenient. He had spent 9 years training himself out of noticing things. It had worked, mostly. It stopped working the second she crossed the threshold in a dress that didn't fit her, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else in the world. He had followed her scent across the room without meaning to. It cut through the perfume and the wine and the antler smoke of the chandeliers like a single clear note, in a song that was otherwise all noise. It smelled like rain on a roof. It smelled, absurdly, like home, a word he had stopped using 9 years ago because home was a place that had been taken from him, and you don't keep using the name of something you lost. So when she went down, he was already close enough to catch her, up close, starving and half-conscious. She smelled even more like it, like something he used to have and had convinced himself he didn't miss. He didn't say anything. He wasn't a man who said things. He was a man who did things, quietly, and let the doing speak for him. So he simply didn't let go. The room noticed. 300 wolves went silent in that particular way a room goes silent when everyone understands at the exact same moment that something has shifted and none of them are allowed to say so out loud. It's the silence of 100 people recalculating their evening plans. It's the silence before rumors are born. Rian ignored all of it. He lifted her the rest of the way, one arm under her knees, and turned toward the doors before anyone could offer help he had no intention of accepting. "Your Grace," a healer began, hurrying forward. "No," he said. One word. It was enough. He carried her out himself, through the hall, past the courtiers who parted like water around a stone, and none of them said a word, because you did not question the king when his face looked like that. Still, controlled, and underneath the control, something that had not moved in 9 years and had just started moving again, all at once, with no warning. Mara came back to herself in pieces. First there was the ceiling, moving. Then there was an arm under her back, solid as a wall, and she thought, in the loose and unguarded way you think things right after fainting, that she should apologize for staring at his cufflink instead of his face. It was silver, shaped like a wolf mid-howl. She found herself fixed on it with a strange, disproportionate attention, the way you fix on a single word in a language you don't speak, because your brain needs something small to hold on to while the rest of the world sorts itself out. "You're awake," he said. Not a question. She stopped, tried again. "I'm so embarrassed." "You fainted. That's not an embarrassing thing to do. It's a thing bodies do when they're not fed enough." Mara felt her face go hot, which was its own kind of answer, and he seemed to understand that too, because he didn't push. He just kept walking, down a corridor lined with old portraits of kings who all had his same still, unreadable face, like a family trait passed down through centuries of not letting anyone see what they were thinking. "You can put me down," she said. "I can walk. You couldn't stand 5 minutes ago. That was 5 minutes ago. I'm very resilient." Something crossed his face that might have been the beginning of a smile, if he'd let it get that far. He didn't. He set her down carefully in a side room, on a couch that was probably worth more than every piece of furniture Mara had ever owned combined, and knelt in front of her, checking her pulse at her wrist with 2 fingers, like it was the most natural thing in the world for a king to do. "When did you last eat?" he asked. Mara opened her mouth to lie. It was reflex. "You didn't tell the king your pack couldn't feed its healers properly. You didn't tell anyone that." 2 days, she said instead, and hated herself a little for it, because the truth came out before the lie could get organized. His jaw did something small and tight. 2 days. "The rations ran short. It happens. It's fine." "It's not fine. It's fine for people like me," she said, and heard how it sounded the second it left her mouth. Small, resigned. The kind of thing you say when you've said it to yourself so many times it stopped sounding sad and started sounding like a fact. He looked at her for a long moment. Long enough that she started counting the tiles on the floor again, because that was easier than being looked at like that, like she was a puzzle someone had been trying to solve for 9 years and had just found the missing piece for. "You're not people like anything," he said. "You're a person. There's a difference." Mara didn't know what to do with that, so she didn't do anything with it. She just sat there, in her sister's dress, in the king's private sitting room, while a servant brought bread and cheese and fruit on a tray so heavy it had to be carried with 2 hands, and Rian watched her eat like it mattered to him whether she finished it. It was strange, being watched like that, not the way courtiers watched her, cataloging her rank and her clothes, and deciding how much attention she was worth. He watched her like the food actually going into her body was the single most important event happening in the palace that night. "You keep looking at my cufflink," he said after a while. Mara froze mid-bite. "I don't. You do. You've looked at it 4 times since you woke up. It's a nice cufflink. It was my father's." "Oh," she swallowed. "I'm sorry. For staring. Don't apologize for looking at something. Apologize for lying about it." But he said it without heat, almost gently, and Mara found herself laughing before she could stop herself, a short, surprised sound that didn't belong in a room this formal. He looked pleased by it, just for a second. Then the stillness came back down over his face like a curtain, and she understood, without being told, that this was a man who did not let himself be pleased for very long. They sat there a while, not talking, while she finished the bread, and something in the room felt settled in a way Mara couldn't explain and didn't try to. It was the first time in longer than she wanted to admit that she'd sat somewhere and not counted the exits. "Why did you catch me?" she asked eventually. "You don't know me." Rian was quiet long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. "I don't know how to explain it," he said finally. "There's a thing that happens between wolves, sometimes. It's called a mate bond, and it's supposed to announce itself gently, over weeks, sometimes months. You're supposed to feel it building, like weather coming in from a long way off. And yours didn't build. It hit me across the room like a wall falling on my chest. He said it plainly, like he was reporting weather, not confessing something that had rearranged 9 years of careful numbness in the space of one evening. I've never had that happen before. I didn't know it could happen like that. Mara sat with that for a second. It should have terrified her. Some distant, sensible part of her noted that it probably would terrify her. Later, once the shock wore off and she had time to be a normal person about it. Right now it just felt like a fact, dropped into the room the way facts get dropped when no one has the energy left to dress them up. "I'm nobody," she said. "I want you to know that before this goes any further, I'm not a lord's daughter. I'm not even a proper healer yet. I'm still in training. I don't have a title. I don't have land. I don't have anything a king is supposed to want." Rian looked at her like she'd said something slightly insulting about the weather. "I didn't ask for a resume," he said. "I asked what my body already decided on its own, which was you. Rank was never the qualification. That's easy to say. It's the only thing I've said tonight that I'm certain of." There was a knock at the door, and a steward's voice, muffled, asking if His Grace required anything, and whether the physician should be sent for after all, and Rian answered without turning, in the same flat, final tone he used for everything. "No, she's being taken care of." Mara sat very still after the door closed again, holding what was left of the bread in both hands like it might steady her, the way holding on to something small and physical steadies you when the rest of the world has just tipped sideways. "I don't know what to do with this," she admitted. "Any of this. 2 hours ago I was hiding by the wall counting exits, and now the king of the whole territory is telling me I'm his mate, like it's a fact he read off a piece of paper." "I'm not asking you to know what to do with it tonight," Rian said. "I'm asking you to eat the rest of that bread and not go back out to that ballroom until your color comes back. Everything else can wait." It was such a small, practical thing to say, after everything else, that Mara almost laughed again. It was the strangest kind of kindness, not grand gestures, not declarations, just a king quietly insisting she finish her meal. She ate the rest of the bread. He watched her do it, arms crossed, leaning against the wall by the door like he had nowhere else in the world he needed to be. Though Mara was fairly sure a king on the night of his own mating ball had approximately 400 places he was supposed to be. He stayed anyway. Outside, the music kept playing, and 300 wolves kept dancing and drinking and pretending not to talk about what they'd all just seen. And none of it touched the small room where Mara sat finishing bread she hadn't had to fight anyone for, under the eyes of a man who had just told her, plainly, that she was his, without asking her permission to feel that way and without expecting her to answer. She didn't answer. Not that night. There wasn't an answer ready in her yet. Just the bread, and the cufflink shaped like a howl, and the strange new quiet in her chest where the counting used to be. The door stayed closed. The court outside kept spinning its rumors, each one further from the truth than the last. And inside, Mara Voss sat with a full stomach and an unfinished feeling, staring at a piece of silver shaped like a wolf, mid-cry, wondering, without dread, without joy, just wondering, what exactly she had fallen into when her knees gave out on that ballroom floor.